Hi guys, welcome to Daily Swift. Today we will learn about table views. We will create a UI table view programmatically and we will implement a data source such that we can display a list of strings. In this case, we are going to display a list of company names. So let's get started. Open up Xcode, create a new Xcode project, single view app, and let's call this table views. Created the project. This creates us main.storyboard, which has a view controller. Its corresponding file is viewcontroller.swift. We will be working inside this file because we will be doing everything programmatically. So let's get started. The first thing we need is a table view, right? We want to add the table view inside the view controller. So let's create a table view. To create a table view, we can use the initializers that UIKit provides us. I'm going to use this initializer where I can specify the style of UITableView. Let's say that the size is 0 and the style, we get 3 options. I'm going to select plain. Feel free to explore the other options. Let's say it's plain for now. Now that I have table view, all I need to do is add it to the view. This view is a view of the view controller, right? So I say view.add subview table view. So that's it. I have created table view. I have added it to the view, but we are not quite done yet. Notice how the frame is 0. That means even though I have added the table view to the view, I have not sized it properly. To do that, we are going to use layout anchors and auto layout, which will help us size the table view properly. In this case, I want the table view to be as big as the view. To do that, I am going to use 4 different constraints and activate them together. To activate multiple constraints together, NSLayout constraint exposes this function called activate, which takes in an array of NSLayout constraints to activate together. Right? So the first constraint that we need is, let's say, the top anchor. I want the top of table view to correspond to view's top, right? So I'm going to say table view dot top anchor dot constraint equal to, and pass in view dot top anchor. It's simple. We are attaching the top anchor of the view with the table view's top anchor. Similarly, I want table view dot bottom anchor dot constraint equal to view dot bottom anchor. Now we will do the same thing for the leading and the trailing anchors. That way we've covered all 4 edges, and auto layout should have enough information to size the table view properly. Table view dot trailing anchor dot constraint equal to view dot trailing anchor. That's it. We have created the table view, added it to the view, and set up auto layout constraints. There is one crucial thing that's missing. That is when we create a view programmatically, views have this property called translates auto resizing mask into constraints set to true by default when we create it programmatically. So if I do table view dot translates auto resizing mask into constraint, this is true by default and we don't want that. I'll explain why. So when this is true, it means that auto layout is going to translate the auto resizing masks that the UI table view has into constraints, which will add flexible width and flexible height constraints depending upon the default auto resizing masks that come with the table view, which are going to conflict with our top, bottom, leading, and trailing anchor constraints that we have provided. So we don't want conflicts. If conflicts happen, the auto layout system will try to resolve it by removing a random, or it tries to find one of the constraint that's conflicting and tries to remove it and solve it. So we don't want conflicts to happen. So always remember to set translates auto resizing mask into strings to false when we are creating a UI view in code and adding it as a subview. One might wonder, why don't we have to do this when we do this in storyboards, right? In storyboards and in nib files, when you drag drop a UI view, Xcode by default has this property turned as false, and that's why it all works fine, right? So with all that said and done, let's run and see if we have a table view, an empty table view. So it's running, launching table view. There you have it. You have the table view, an empty table view, right? Now let's fill it with data, right? How do we provide data to a table view? Let me add the data that we want to display. Let's call the data to be items. And for simplicity, this is just going to be a string add here with the names that we are going to display. We are going to display these company names: Facebook, Apple, Amazon. I'm just using some random strings for the example. Netflix, and let's say Google. All right, so we have our items list. Now we need to tell the table view that this is what we want to display. How do we tell the table view? So table view has this property called the data source, and it is expecting a value for this data source. Table view will ask this data source certain questions so that it can draw itself out, right? So for here we are working with the view controller. Let's say that the view controller is going to answer all these questions. I'm going to say that table view's data source is view controller. Now it's going to complain that, hey, the view controller does not conform to the protocol UITableViewDataSource. We need to conform. So whoever is saying that it is going to provide these answers for the data source, it needs to conform to UITableViewDataSource. So let's say I'm using this extension feature of in Swift to organize code better. So let's say UITableViewDataSource, and that way we are conforming to UITableViewDataSource. Now this UITableViewDataSource has two functions that are required to be implemented. Let's add the stub functions. These are the two functions. So number one is, it asks us how many rows are there in my section. The number two question is, what am I supposed to display? It knows that I need a table view cell. I support table view cells. Table view says I support table view cells. Give me a table view cell that I can display at this row, right? And by default, the number of sections is 1, and it's a 0 base index. So it will call this function for section 0. And if we have specified more sections, then it will keep calling this function to ask how many rows are this in section 0, how many rows are in section 1, and so on and so forth, right? In this case, we just need one section, and we know the number of rows. The number of rows is going to be the count of these items, right? So we can answer that right away. We can say that items.count. That should take care of, okay, I need 5 rows, or the number of items rows. So the next question is more crucial. Table view needs to know what kind of table view cell am I going to use, and I need to set values on the cell to display my data. So the first thing we need to do is register the type of cell that we are going to display. To register it, we have two different functions that we can use. The first one is by providing a class name, and the second function is using a nib file. The second option we will use when it's commonly used when we have custom UITableViewCells which are supported using a XIB file or a nib file. So we have to create that nib files and provide it to the table view so it can create it when it is trying to dequeue cells. We'll get into the dequeuing part in a bit. Okay, let's register. For this tutorial, we're going to keep it simple. We'll use the built-in UITableViewCell, and we'll provide it as the type of the class, and we'll say that the reuse identifier is this constant called cell. Okay, and now we have to create a cell. How do we create a cell? We can create TableView cells like this just by creating it and returning the cell, but this will crash. Why? So table views are how table view works is that for each cell that is going to be displayed on screen, imagine that you have 10,000 records or 10,000 strings, right? It doesn't make sense to create 10,000 cells and return those 10, hold those 10,000 cells inside memory, right? Because at any given point of time, you will only be you will only see about like 15 or 20 items depending upon the height of your cell, right? So anytime you scroll and a cell goes off screen, it can use those cells again, and thus save a lot of memory and use it efficiently. To do that, TableView handles all that for us. All we have to do is use this function called dequeuCells. So TableView.dequeue reusable cell. We want to reuse the cell with what identifier? The identifier that we have registered here. So the identifier that we have registered is cell. So we have to make sure that these identifiers match properly. Otherwise, it is not going to find a reusable cell and it will throw an exception. To make sure that I do not mess up the spelling of the reuse identifier, I make sure that I create a constant and use that instead of typing the string again. So that way I'm guaranteed that I'm using the same constant, right? Well, let's pass the index path. This will give me a cell, and now I need to set the label of the cell. So cell by default has this label called title, cell dot index path, and let's say cell dot title label or text label. It's called text label, and let's say the text value. And how do I extract the value from my items thing, right? And that's where this parameter called the index path comes into play. Like I told you, the table view will first ask the data source, how many rows are in my section? We say, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We say that 5 rows are there. Now it is going to call this function for each row. And with each row, this index path has the details of which section it is and which row it is. So we can use that to extract out the value from our data source, right? So we are trying to display this items list. So I'm going to say items, and I want the item at index path dot current row, right? So index path dot row, give me that item, and because it's already a string, I can just directly assign it to the cells text label dot text. Okay, so with that done, let's run and see if we get our table view populated with the right results. There you go, we have our items displaying here. Now I see that there is a lot of empty space below. I can change this is because it's a plain table view. I can use a different style like grouped and run it again. And now it looks like this. No more extra cells, just the cells that we have specified. And I like this inset grouped style also. I think it looks a little cleaner. So there you go. That's our table view with the list. Now to make sure that it works for a larger list, we can copy paste this a few times, and to see that scrolling and everything works fine. And dequeuing of cells also works fine. Let me know in the comments if any of the concepts I've explained is not clear. I can try to explain it better. There you go. We have all the items displayed. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section. Any feedback is appreciated. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. I'm sorry this took more than 10 minutes. It took about 15 minutes, I guess. All right. See you.